Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 3,407 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. We made it to another milestone. We are past 3,400. Last week's video did phenomenally. Yes, the Xbox 360 FOMO is over. Prices have crashed hard, which in my opinion, great, because now you guys can pick these games up for a whole hell of a lot cheaper than in some instances I did, or that some other people did. Now, are prices going to get to pre-FOMO levels? In my opinion, no. If you've been collecting as long as I have, no systems outside of maybe the Atari 2600 right now are completely just dirt cheap. Not many people are left in it that care about it. And for the 360, I do think these prices will stabilize like they have been doing. They're not going to keep going down. So for instance, when I got Infernal Hell's Vengeance, I really don't see it. It might be a $40 game at some point, but it's never going back to a $5 game. Same thing with Cold Step Saga. It's never going back down to a $40 game. But if you guys are interested, this is the best point to grab it, because there are a lot of people out there that see game collecting as an investment, which in my opinion, I don't like, because I would be happy if all these were worth dollars so I could have more. But what are you going to do? So a lot of people bought up these games and now are trying to cut their losses. So that's why you're starting to see some of the prices come down on things like Bullet Witch, on things like Fatal Inertia, Operation Darkness, all those games. So right now is the time to pick them up. If you want them, if they look interesting, if you want to play them. If you're looking to make money, then that ship has sailed at this moment. It'll still keep going up 5 years from now. You'll probably wish that you had gotten some of these. But anyways, that's not why you're here today. We got another 10 games. Some of these are bangers I've been trying to pick up since the FOMO started. And like I said, because prices are coming down, I've finally been able to pick them up. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
So the first game we're starting off with today is a very annoying case of I just could not find it for a deal. The game is a racing game, which is already not something in my wheelhouse. It's been described as more or less adult Mario Kart, so it's Mario Kart with realistic cars. Though I said that to my wife, and we played it the other day at co-op, and she actually thought it was Mario Kart. But you probably know which game I'm talking about. It is the amazing Blur. And Blur and I have an interesting history. I can swear I've seen this game at Savers in the past because it's a racing game. I foolishly passed up on it. And also you'll notice this little icon right here. So there are actually cover variants of Blur that come with either the Chrome BMW code, or there's one called the Viper code. Now these are harder to come by. The copies of Blur right now, when I originally wanted to get it, were around $30 to $40, and then they just got up to around $50, $60. Now, due to the crash, so to speak, they're back down to that $30 range, maybe even $25. But I did pay up to get this freaking little variant, though it comes with a code that is not dependent on a QR code. It's a button prompt. And it says you have to use it only in online multiplayer, so that's kind of a bummer. But yeah, it says LTRT, LTRT. So if any of you guys have Xbox Live, which I don't, or have Game Pass or whatever you need now, see if that works. But this is an incredibly fun game. So it is a car combat game. It reminds me a little bit of the presentation of Split Second, because they have these sections where you have to go and get fans and do all this and that. They have different game modes, like elimination, kind of a burnout crash mode, race mode. You can have up to 3 power-ups at once. Now, unlike Mario Kart, the power-ups are on the field, and you know what they are before you pick them up. So there's a boost, there's kind of a red shell, there's one where you can shoot little darts, there's a big AoE attack, there's a shield, and then there's a lightning charge, as well as a mine, and then one that repairs your car because your car can be blown up. Now, it doesn't wreck you completely from the match if that's not the style of match you're playing. It just wrecks your car and then you automatically start up again. Just like when you get hit by stuff, or if you go off the track and get reset. It doesn't completely kill your momentum, but there is no rubber banding in this. So it can, if someone gets far enough ahead, they're going to destroy you. But it is a hell of a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed playing it so much that I got Jen to play it with me in co-op mode. So once again, we're getting to a co-op video here that I am working on. And this one's probably going to be on super fun. She has never played this game before, is not a huge racing person, but because the controls are so tight and simple, it basically uses 3 buttons. You have accelerate, you have brake, and then you have use your items. And for the items, you can have up to 3 items at once. If you have 3 items and roll over another item, you can't use it. So there's the Y button just ejects items. And it's a super, super fun game. Depending on the track you're playing on, you have different cars you can choose from. They're all real cars, so there's stuff like Camaros, you know, Mustangs, BMWs, Audis, all that kind of good stuff. And it's just a really, really fun game. The drifting mechanic takes a little bit getting used to. I can see that. It definitely doesn't have the most intuitive controls, but after playing 2 or 3 sessions on this, I already started getting a hang of it. Hell, Jen did such a great job. She nearly won a race. There's this big Autobahn race where it's just one giant lap, and she got all the way to the end and lost right at the end of it. But Blur, I know I had comments say it was worth the $40. Yes, it is worth that. So this one, absolutely, if you like racing games, or even if you don't like racing games like myself, if you like an arcade racing experience that is super fun, such a shame this series never went anywhere else. It is literally like taking Burnout and then mixing in some Mario Kart DNA, and I loved every second of it. Now, a game that I did not love every second of, but I had to see what it was about, Duke Nukem Forever. So if you know about this game, it was in production hell forever, I believe 10 years, I want to say. And as far as me and Duke Nukem go, I remember playing the Duke Nukem game on either the PS1 or the N64. I rented it. And the whole reason I wanted it is because it had strippers in it, and I wanted to see those pixelated girlies because I was like 12, 13 years old, so what do you expect? But I knew it was a Doom clone or a Quake clone or, you know, one of those versions of games. But it had that cool sense of humor taken from Rowdy Roddy Piper from They Live, which I didn't know until years later. I just thought he was some big bombastic guy like Johnny Bravo, but literally the quote he uses about chewing gum and kicking ass and he's all out of gums, ripped directly from that movie. But as far as the game goes, I could not stand it. It is so slow on the uptake. It takes you so long to get to the gameplay. You start off the game within a game. It's meta as hell. You go back into the world. You're going down an elevator. You have a talk show host. And then suddenly there's an alien invasion. But it's so arduous. It was kind of the exact opposite of what I want to get into a game. It's like, hey, you know what? Give me a debriefing, drop me in there, and then let's go. With this one, it constantly felt like I was grinding my gears, trying to get started, having to go into an elevator, having to get, like, they're trying to set up this big plot, this world building. I don't care. I really just want to see how it plays. And when it got to the point of how it played, it didn't play all that well. It really didn't play all that well. The gunplay felt kind of sloppy. Having to go into different areas using this weird LED vision didn't work. The aliens were ugly. Then you get to this big turret taking on a giant ship. Didn't have the kind of weight in it I expected. You die, you go back pretty far, so there's definitely not generous continues, as well as you had to get these power nodes, put them in there, but they were kind of obscurely positioned. I don't know. It just wasn't a fun time. Don't pick that one up. Don't pick that. I think I got it for $6. I probably wasted my money, but I'm at that point now where we're also diving into games that I don't know about, since more than just being about games you should pick up, I'm kind of just exploring the whole library at this point. Speaking of exploring the whole library, a game that I've heard forever is a lot of fun. It had a sequel recently that didn't do as well as the original, but the original is still very, very lauded over and is a cheap game. We're talking $5, $10 complete, and that is Mirror's Edge. And I gotta tell you, I was genuinely surprised by this game living up to the hype. Now, I've never looked into it that much. The only thing I knew is that it was kind of a free-running game that didn't focus as much on the gunplay as much as it focused on the kind of the maneuverability and the aerialness of it. And it's such a striking game. It takes place in this really clean, pure white city, but then there's these neon lights everywhere that really cast these almost a neo-noir feel to the whole thing. And it's a first-person game, but you will see your reflection, and obviously you're playing as this character. And it's a parkour thing. So you're going around, you're jumping on top of stuff, you're jumping off of buildings, you're wall running, you're doing... It reminds me a lot of a game I've talked about recently too, Neon White, where the whole goal is to get through the obstacles as fast and as slick as possible, but also as cool as possible. Now, where it kind of can get clunky is when you have the enemies coming at you, and it took me a little bit to figure out the combat. You can disarm people, and then once you get the gun, there's a very poor system of shooting people and using that, but that's not what the game is focused on. You're meant to avoid combat than engage in it. But if you do have to engage in it, you can. Played the first couple of chapters, had a really great time with this game. Like I said, genuinely surprised that a game like this that I had put off for so long was as good as it was. But then that's kind of the point. That's kind of the point is, yeah, you know what? There's a reason why so many people talk about it. So one that I would highly recommend. I know Catalyst didn't get great reviews, so I'm not sure if I'm going to pick up that one, but as far as this one goes, solid entry. I could easily see myself sitting down and beating this game. Really enjoyed it. Now, here's a funny story. So this was a game that I picked up at my local swap meet back in May, and I got it for a few dollars. This is a pretty cheap game, and I saw this, and I'm like, oh, this is the complete edition, has the DLC, I should pick it up, and that game is Mafia 2. However, the game that came in this was not Mafia 2. The game that was in it, even though it's 2 discs, disc 1 was missing, was a game called Secret Service. And I've never in my life heard of this game. It looks like the most generic freaking shovelware you've ever heard of. But I put this bad boy in to see what it was like. And it's a first-person shooter where you're in the Secret Service, and the first mission is there is an assassination attempt on the president at the Lincoln Memorial, so you're having to protect him. Then the next mission is there is an explosive device placed in the Capitol building, so you're having to go in there and disarm that. And all the enemies look like the same. Like, you have 3 enemy skins that are all the same look. Like, there's not much differentiation, so you'll have 3 enemies standing in a row that all have the exact same outfit and everything. But it's dumb, janky fun. It feels... The controls feel a little too loose when you're in the free aim mode, so it just feels like you're constantly going through molasses. But then if you go in and adjust the sensitivity, it then makes it go so fast that you feel like you don't have any control when you're in the down sights mode. So it's definitely an earlier game on the 360, and just for the novelty alone, you know, I'd much rather play Mafia 2. I'm still looking for a disc 1 for that, because I did not expect this, but I figured, why not? Let's check out Secret Service. And I don't even know I think it's like a $5, $6 game. It's not an expensive game, but just one that I just had to throw out there because it really was pretty funny how it ended up in the collection. Alright, now I've tried not to do this too much, but we are going to do one that I have spoken of before. Now, when I first started covering these games, on some of the games, I actually didn't pop it in and try it out. So a lot of what I was talking about was just what I gleaned from seeing it online or what it looked like. So once I got Cold Step Saga and I tried it out, I talked about it again. And so at this point, because I do want to do a tier list of all the games I've spoken about, I'm going back and I'm checking out some of the other games I have that I talked about but I didn't actually play. And one of the ones that I wanted to check out is one that was very expensive and has kind of come down to earth now, and that game is Bullet Witch. So this is Bullet Witch. It has a reversible cover, in case you've wondered. There is a poster that comes with it that I don't have, so technically mine is not CIB, though I'm not too much of a stickler. If I have the case, the manual, and the game, unless there's something like, even if there's something like a bonus disc or a soundtrack, for the most part, I consider that enough. I don't care about reg cards. If it has a comment, great. You know, I'll keep an eye out for it. But unless it's something that drastically affects the gameplay or the packaging, like the case and the manual, I'm okay. You know, even with some of my Super Nintendo games, like I don't have the damn map for Secret of Mana. That one bothers me more than not having the comic and Bullet Witch. But yes, Bullet Witch. So I've heard this game is terrible, and I've heard from other people say it's janky fun, and I definitely will land firmly in the camp of this game is incredible. It is so stupid. Think of it like Lollipop Chainsaw if there was no polish and was just purely ridiculous. Like, the game starts off and you have these zombies going and gunning people down and eating them, and then Alice, I think, or Alicia, your name is, you show up and you're gunning them down with a giant gun the size of freaking the Slumber Party Massacre driller gun, and you have unlimited bullets, which is a huge bonus. Your health slowly regenerates. Your magic, I don't know how your magic works, because when you use your so when you don't have unlimited bullets. When you reload, you use magic, but you have like a limit on your magic until it gets unlimited, and then you can drop an ultimate, so like a lightning storm or a tornado, and that allows you to blow up tanks and do other giant things of that kind of thing. There's floating brains you got to take out, and once you shoot the floating brain, it will unlock a corridor that then allows you to get further in the map. And that's kind of how the game works. And I got to tell you, I did not expect this game to be as enjoyable as it was. I thought it was simply another horny boy game, but much like Lollipop Chainsaw, popping it in and playing it, it does have some value. And it makes me think, man, is the Onchimbara game, the Bikini Samurai one, is that going to be this dumb fun too? Really enjoyed Bullet Witch. I wanted to highlight it again here because the price has gone down. And if you like stupid, janky fun, like you're going to fire your gun. It has 80 bullets, so it has a good repertoire of bullets in it for your reloading. But when you hit the enemies, they're not going to react much. So there's not much heaviness to it. This is purely for people like myself who enjoy things like Return of the Living Dead. Like, it's so stupid, but it's excellent. So if that sounds like something that's your jam, if you can find this game cheap, get it. Get it now, because it probably will bounce back up. Because, like I said, I've spoken to people, I've talked to people who bought a lot of 360 stuff and are now trying to offload it because they just weren't that passionate about it. Which, hey, if you're not, you don't have to be. Get out of it. Get the prices down, because that'll help us all out. All right. So here's one that I also picked up at that same swap meet, but I've avoided putting it in just because it's so hard to really get an idea of RPGs, especially ones like this, on such a short amount of time. But hey, we're going to talk about it, and that is Star Ocean: The Last Hope, otherwise known as Star Ocean 4. Now, this game is a big boy. I believe it's 4 discs. So yeah, 4 discs, and they don't have them in that other thing. They're just all stacked on top of each other. And I think this might have been a 360 exclusive, or if not, 360 PS3. And it's kind of the forgotten Star Ocean. You'll see people talk to death about the first one, the second one, the one on PS2, and then the new one that came out kind of got lambasted. But I've never heard anyone talk about the 4th game. And I popped it in just to see what it was like. I couldn't get past the cutscenes. I couldn't even get to an actual combat scenario. You are in space at least, but it's cheap. It's really cheap, and I have talked to some other people who say it is very, very good in the Star Ocean games. I played the first Star Ocean. I'm still in the middle of Star Ocean Second Story R. I do have the 3rd one. I picked it up at a thrift store a long time ago. So I pretty much have all of them except the 5th one. But this is like a $10 game. And I remember seeing that, I was shocked. So there's no way this, I mean, maybe it'll stay a $10 game forever, but it's an RPG. It's 4 discs. So if you want a 360 collection that has all the RPGs, you got to pick it up, because this is one that's, it's definitely once more and more people check it out, play it, I just have a feeling that one's going to get a little bit pricier. So if you're into that kind of thing, the way the Star Ocean games play, which is generally on a map, you have 3 or 4 different people in there, you can pick up different characters throughout the story, and it's very, very kind of like a melding of Star Trek feel mixed with a fantasy RPG. At least that's what I've gotten from the first 2. Where this one lands, I don't know. Okay, now here's a game that I was very excited to play back in the day. They talked about it, I want to say coming to the N64, and then it got delayed to the GameCube, and then Microsoft bought out the damn company, and it went from being a Nintendo game to an Xbox game, but I believe it got delayed even longer till the Xbox 360, and that game was Cameo Elements of Power. And I remember when it came out, there wasn't many people saying many nice things about it. And even to this day, it's not a very beloved game. There are certain fans of it who say it's good, but there's other people who say it's terrible. It's cheap. You can still find it for $8 complete. And so I finally popped it in. It definitely looks like classic Rare. It has that same Banjo-Kazooie looking art style, and the game throws you immediately into a meat grinder. And you think, for someone who complains all the time about games hand-holding you as much as you do, I would enjoy the way this game starts. But frankly, I found it a little overwhelming and a little annoying, because it was hard to know what you could do or what you should do. Think of it like, you know, what most games do is they will piecemeal approach you how you play the game. So as you're doing it, it will show you, not tell you. So you'll find yourself in a scenario, you'll get an ability, and then you'll be able to solve it. For instance, let's say you need to have an enemy stay on a switch while you hit another switch. You find out that if you throw the boomerang in Zelda, it will freeze them, so then you hit them with that, and then you can get into the next room. Then let's say later in the game, you get a bow and arrow, and you fire the bow and arrow through a fire, and then it hits a thing that needs to be caught on fire, and then that's how you progress. So naturally, as you get deeper and deeper into the game, you expand your tool belt of how you interact with the world and how you're supposed to accomplish things. The problem I think that Cameo Elements of Power starts with is it gives you the smorgasbord immediately without any direction, and then you can just toggle between all of them. So you can play as the ice dude who can pick up things and throw them, the plant guy who can box and go underground and hit up, and then the rock guy who can turn into a rock and then roll around and spike people, and then the fairy girl alone, the main character, who can do a spin kick. But it doesn't do a great job of teaching you when to use what and how each works with itself, as well as it seems like you have no way of actually doing damage. You get the spiky guy and you get the orcs on you, but then you can't get rid of them. You have the guy who can go under the ground, but then it's almost impossible to go up without getting damaged. And same thing when you use the ice guy, you can pick him up and throw him, but it's all over the place. It seems like the only way to get rid of enemies is to get lucky and they die, or to throw them over the edge. And it irked me. And they each had their own abilities, and it was fun and all. It was poorly executed. You know, and as funny as it sounds, like, it really is strange that I would be saying you gave us too much too soon, but I really do feel like that set up the game in the wrong way. So when you hear about all these horrible reviews or all these problems about it, if it starts off with this kind of imbalance, I can see it maybe carrying on for the entirety of the game. And just, it wasn't that much fun to play. Like, I didn't really enjoy I felt so weak. So going into these different characters, it seemed like they were all equally ineffective. So playing as the plant guy, my arms were super short, and then I couldn't really get above anyone. Like, the hitbox was so short. Playing as the big golem dude, you can roll around, but you couldn't do any damage without spearing them. And then the ice guy, I didn't like it. I didn't like the game at all. Another one that I was disappointed with, and I would tell you guys, you know, pick it up if you want, but yeah, there's a reason why Rare fell off, and this is part of it. Okay, so because I like to throw in some gimmies, like I said, this is a series that I've stayed away from, but we're finally, well, now I mentioned one of them, but I'm going to mention the one that I think, if you're looking at the 3 other ones, this is the one I'd recommend, and that's Gears of War 2. So Gears of War 2, I remember this one was the first one I bought when it first came out, when it was current. It's, in my opinion, Gears of War 3 loses the thread a little bit with the 4-player co-op. All the time, I think Gears of War is at its best when you have 2 players. So that much in line with kind of playing Halo's campaign with your friend, Gears of War with your friend is really, really fun. And yes, the first game is great, but I feel like the second one, they really refined it, had an excellent story. There is a great emotional payoff at the end that then turns to ash in front of your mouth and is awful. And you're also not having to deal with losing, something that happens in Gears of War 3 that really rocked the series in a way that, while at the time made sense and was a great way to finish it off, it also led to the problems, in my opinion, with Gears of War 4 and 5, and is why now the new one that's coming out is called Gears of War E-Day, going back and starting at the beginning of the emergence with Marcus and Dom. But 2's great. 2's also the one that introduced the Horde mode. This is when, after, I think Call of Duty World at War introduced zombies, you started seeing all these other games introduce these kind of cooperative tower defense survival modes, like how many waves. Very arcadey, in all honesty, like a very arcadey experience they were adding as an additional bonus mode into games. And Gears of War 2 with Horde mode was one of the first instances of that really took off. So speaking of Gears of War, because we have talked about a few Gears of War clones, Binary Domain, Inversion, well, this one definitely is a Gears of War clone, and it is very good. I have not seen practically anyone talk about it. I've seen one copy in the wild, and then it was gone. I didn't pick it up stupidly. I should have. So I went ahead and picked it up. It's about a $20 game, and that is Quantum Theory. And this game's kind of nuts. So it says it's 1 to 2 players. I assume that's 1 to 2 player co-op. And you start off the game and you're in this giant tower system. And the whole purpose of the game is these big towers that have exploded out of the earth. And it's your job to go and destroy these towers. And for the most part, it's taken over the whole world. And you're like the only guy who can take it out. But there are some remnants of humans. And then you have this helper person who you can throw with a button. And I don't know if that's the second player or if it's the later humans you run into. But you basically, after you destroy that tower, they can't continue on. I'm sure they come back. And so you get to this new establishment with a new tower, and then you're leading the way for these guys to go and take them out. Big grotesque enemies. It doesn't have the chainsaw. It has the same interface of Gears of War. It's a little bit less in the way of responsiveness, but its big moment of glory is that if you're shooting something in the head, it has a chance to proc a close-up of the head exploding. And then when the enemy dies, the whole thing dies, like blows up real good. Now, it doesn't have the same weight as something like jibbing someone with the shotgun in Gears of War or using the chainsaw in Gears of War, because regardless, every time when an enemy dies, they just blow up. But it's still very satisfying, especially when that headshot proc goes up, because you'll get enemies that are like 20 feet tall and you hit them in the head and it will do the same thing. So it does seem like it has that mechanic equally across everything, not just against the peons. And other than that, it's nothing special, but once again, as a game that, with all these 360 games, there's so much DNA in it that it doesn't really feel like I'm playing anything that couldn't have come out this year, which is really part of the problem I have with a lot of modern gaming, is that a lot of these 360 games that are 12 years old, if you released it and put a 2024 coat of paint on it this year, you couldn't really tell the difference. I mean, that's part of the reason why I think Space Marines 2 has done so well, is that they finally released a game that had Xbox 360, PS3 proclivities, where it has a campaign that is 8 hours long, which is fine for a campaign. If you want endless content, the multiplayer will do that for you. Please, for the love of God, we need to get away from games needing to have a 15, 20, 40-hour campaign. Because at the end of the day, you're just extending it with stuff that is not important, either with meaningless side content or a convoluted story that meanders or collectibles that have no purpose. Let's get back to getting a laser-focused campaign. Because, hey, 8 hours, that's still worth it. I mean, you consider it, if you're going out to the movies right now, for 2 people, it's $50. So I know people complain about a $60 game, $70 game, this and that. But if you replay it, or if it has co-op and you replay it, that, in my opinion, far outweighs a 20-hour campaign sometimes. Anyways, off my horse. Last one we're talking about this week is one of the games that I was genuinely very surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I've seen this game to death. It's like $5. You never really hear anyone talk about it, and let's just talk about it. This game is Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. Now, it does say it has a manual, but I do believe the manual is one of these lame manuals. It just says the manual's on the disc. So this is a CIB version, unless someone can tell me otherwise. Now, I've talked about how I like games that kind of play like World of Warcraft. This game plays like World of Warcraft if it was consoleized. So you can start off, you can choose either a male or female character. You have different different races you can play as. They have different abilities. And then a different ultimate, I guess. And I generally get into these kind of games and I go heavy melee, barbarian. But for this one, I decided to go a little different one. I wanted to check out the rogue specs. So I want to be sneaky, doing daggers, figuring that out. But the game does a great service where it allows you to try out all 3 combats in its prologue. So you get to try out the big sword, you get to try out the daggers and sneaking up on people, and you also get to try out the mage weapon, which actually the mage weapon in this game is surprisingly fun to use. Imagine using a staff, but as you're hitting the staff, fire is coming off of it. So it also allows you to do big damage with the staff, whereas typically you're just casting spells and you can't do anything with your melee in a lot of these type of games. This one bucks that trend, and I really enjoyed it. Now, as the rogue, you can sneak up on people and execute them, which is always oodles of fun. And also you get armor sets, and the armor sets are pretty easy and clear. Yeah, you can pick up a shield. You can have, basically the way the magic works is mana regen, and then with the DPS it's crit, and then with the melee I think is just defense and armor. But overall, really solid gameplay. Like, this one's probably one of the best values of anything I've ever touched, because it also has that big open fantasy world. There's fast travel built into it. For $5 to $10 CIB, pick this one up now. It is a lot of fun, and I'm frankly pretty surprised at how much fun it was, and one of the ones that I would like to go and put some more time into. But there you have it, guys. There is another 10 games that you should pick up for the Xbox 360. Except not Duke Nukem Forever. That one was terrible. But yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you for another wonderful week. We had such a great just groundswell last week, where the videos had kind of been losing some of their luster, but then just a whole bunch of new subs came, a whole bunch of new views. So like I said, we're going to keep rolling this down the road. Because the prices have crashed, it also has meant that I've been able to pick up some games I've been wanting. So much like I picked up Blur, I picked up Infernal Hell's Vengeance. Next week, I believe we have 2 that we'll be covering if one shows up. Another one has showed up that I have played. I just had played these ones before it. But yes, as a reminder, I do a video every Tuesday. If you guys have suggestions, please let me know. Are there any other 360 games I haven't covered? I am going back, and you may see me mention a few games I've talked of before, like Bullet Witch, just to give you some more context for how they play, especially right now as the pricing has gone down across the board on most everything. But anyways, it's been so nice getting a hold of you guys. Take care.